I'm Lucy Hennig, and I'm president of the Friends of the Library. And we're glad you came, and we're glad we have this new room to do this in. And we're sorry, we're still doing COVID. Hopefully, we'll feel more comfortable. We'll have a program in April, so we hope at that point we'll be more comfortable. So the Friends of the Library has been doing a series of programs for years, every other month on the third Tuesday. And however, we have never had a program that took us so far away from right here. And it's exciting to have this tonight, a program that will take us across the waters. And I think of our presenter as Dr. Bentley because she has helped with a lot of animals I've had over the years. But we'll think of her as Mica Bentley today, and think of her as a person who, for years and years, has dreamed of Africa and wanted to go to Africa and wanted to know the animals of Africa. And she got to do it in 2019. And we hoped she could give us a program last year, but last year was nothing. So we're so glad she's here right now.
So hoping it'll be worth the wait.
Right, we hope so.
Thank
you
you
for coming.
Thank you. At the end of the program, anybody wants to hang out and ask questions, yeah, I'm happy to stay around and talk. And during the program, if anybody wants to stop and say, I don't understand it, what's that, or you know, whatever, just interrupt, just shout it out, because this is just me up here, just being me. All right.
You want the lights off, Mica?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you expect us to know how to do that?
Well, we've practiced. We'll see.
Is it okay for you?
I think it looks good. How's it look to you guys? We're good? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Jumbo is Swahili for hello. Caribou, welcome. I hope you will read this poem again at the end of our journey tonight and understand it a little better. At age 63, in February of 2019, I lived out a dream I had for at least the last 45 years. My pictures are of the incredible animals that we saw in the 6 different parks we traveled, tracing out the Serengeti Migration route in Tanzania and Kenya. I hope to give you a glimpse into a very different world with many varieties of animals and the magnificent people that live there. We started this incredible trip with a 24-hour journey that ended at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro in the town of Arusha, Tanzania. We spent our first night at an Airbnb called the Garden House. Beautiful, isn't it? So quaint. That night, we dined at the Elegant Polo Club. Both are located on an old sisal plantation that now hosts many small homes and farms. Those were my traveling companions. Our first park to visit was in Arusha. One of the first to greet us was a beautiful male zebra stallion. And his herd, which included a newborn baby. Who knew baby zebras were born with brown stripes? I didn't. A rare find was this gorgeous albino baboon that didn't seem to mind having his picture taken. Yeah, he's showing off. But this precocious primate was more bashful. He is the common colobin with this beautiful long white tail. That night, we stayed in the coffee lodge in Arusha to prepare for our safari and the tented camps that awaited us. So we had some pretty nice amenities to start our trip. Yeah. As we traveled to our first camp in the Tarenger National Park, I was intrigued by the homes and villages or bomas made of sticks and dried cow dung. Never have I seen oxen plowing with a donkey. Around here, donkeys are usually just used for guarding cattle against coyotes. Of the 11 types of antelope we saw, this one was the most beautiful. The waterbuck have heart-shaped patterns on their nose, and the males have impressive, long, spiraling antlers. The Impala was our next find. Very elegant. While a hooded hawk hid in a tree, a mongoose scurried along the road ahead. The acacia tree provides shade and food for many animals and insects, as well as a place for the sociable weaver to build its neat little nest. Close by, a mother elephant strolls with her 2 calves. They will stay with their mothers for several years. This little guy did not like us in his territory, and he put up an impressive display of fearlessness until his mother left him, and he scrambled to catch up with her. He felt tough when he was with mom. For the bird watcher, Africa was a paradise. From the waterfowl, like this egret, to the large and in-charge ostrich. Seen here, the males are black and the females are brown. A little known fact about the ostrich, their leg bones are completely bone. They don't have any marrow in them, so they're very heavy, which is a formidable weapon when you have, it's the only weapon you have in the bush against a lion or something. Anyway, pretty cool. Okay. No first day in the bush would be complete without a pair of Maasai giraffes waving us on into our camp. When we crossed the river, now very low because it's the dry season, our skilled guide, Deo, pointed out a very large lion track. That's the lion track right there. Our first morning in Kitchigoo camp was eye-opening. And by the way, Kitchigoo stands for termite mound, and a lot of you were asking me about the little decoration, the woven decoration, and that is a termite mound that was given to us as a gift by the staff at the Kitchigoo camp. This scenery was lush and gorgeous here. A termite mound as big as a car shocked us all. There are lots of termite mounds there. They're kind of known for it, and that's why they call it Kitchen Camp. The African open-bill storks seem to be taking a peaceful morning in stride. Once again, the keen eye of our guide spotted a leopard print on the road in the sand. While leaving our camp, a baby mongoose took time to check us out before ducking into his home, which, by the way, was an abandoned termite mound. Actually, mongoose are pretty smart. They eat termites, but they won't wipe them out completely so that they have a renewable source of food. They're pretty smart little guys. Of all the birds we saw, the blue heron, the Swanson spurfowl, the marabou stork, and the magpie shrew, as well as violet-backed starling. Yeah, the starlings are even pretty over there. You know, it's amazing. Here they're ugly. There they're pretty. Okay, but undoubtedly, most attractive was the lilac-breasted roller. Beautiful. We stopped for lunch where there were some picnic tables and some welcomed shade. A herd of elephants casually strolled in the tall, lush grass with no regard for us. Then 2 lionesses showed up to do a little hunting. Yikes. The elephants seemed unconcerned and took time to swim and have a snack. These guys would play like submarines. They would get down in the water and just their trunks would be above the water. They were having a really good time. There you go. They just submerged themselves. I didn't know elephants would do that, but they did. Nothing like a good mud bath to top it off and keep the bugs away. This little guy found a hole, and he actually got down in that hole. It's just adorable. The most regal bird we saw was the African fish eel. He and the black-backed jackal were enjoying some shade. Even though the temperatures were in the 80s and 90s, the air was dry, so it was comfortable. The warthogs wanted in on the action at the swimming hole. And the beautiful gray-crowned cranes did their part to delight us. None of the birds were as interesting as the secretary bird, whose name was fashioned after the secretaries of long ago, when pencils and pens would adorn their heads as they worked. Now this bird has a more modern name, the long-legged eagle. In the park, there was only one landmark, Natiti Mountain. It was always our beacon to guide us home. As evening arrived, we took to our camp for some much-needed showering, porch sitting, and dinner. As you can see, we had very nice amenities in our tent, complete with running water, a flushable toilet, and a very comfortable bed. It was an awesome third day. The next day did not disappoint us. Our guide had us up at the crack of dawn. And wouldn't you know it, just a short distance from our camp were two male cheetahs. I must have had 100 pictures of these guys, so to choose 3 or 4 of them was hard. We spent an hour mesmerized by their beauty and grace. They seemed just as eager to show off their handsome appearance. They were as unconcerned about us as the deer in Cade's Cove would be. We were so close to them, we could hear them purr. Our guide actually drove to this mound that they were laying on and just drove the Jeep right up to encircled where they were laying, and they just kind of looked at us like, big deal, guys. It was fantastic. A little known fact, our guide pointed out that cheetahs are the only feline that do not have retractable claws. As we reluctantly departed from our feline friends, we spotted a rare dik-dik, smallest of all the antelope, and he was very shy. We had to be quick to get a picture of him. In a nearby tree, the buffalo beaver, cousin to the common sociable beaver, built its nest. The buffalo beaver nest is more like a messy condo, shared by several. The sociable beaver takes pride in constructing a tiny little nest that hangs from the acacia trees. Seen here, the buffalo beaver is the more colorful of the two weavers. See, he's the buffalo beaver, and there's the little common sociable beaver. Here is the bad dude on the block. Don't mess with him. The Cape buffalo are very territorial and aggressive herbivores. But it seems this red-beaked oxpicker was not intimidated. He had his lunch spot picked out literally atop the head of this massive beast. Moving along quietly, we stumbled across a marsh turtle in his own private pool. There's a little turtle over there on the far side. Let's see him. Cruising along the park road, this very interesting baobab tree caught our attention. I want you to notice what's in the tree here and here. It looks a little bit like the Keebler elf tree, don't you think? Which our guide had no idea what that was. I was like, Dale, stop. It's the Keebler elf tree. He was like, what? Everybody else in the band got it. These magnificent trees mature in 500 years and can live for 1,000 years. You can see here how large the mature tree is compared to the size of these elephants. It was time to move on to the Nagorov crater and another tented camp. That was our staff saying goodbye to us. We passed through several towns. Here we can see children in their school uniforms going to school. And the streets were pretty crowded. People, vehicles, bicycles, motorcycles, everybody just kind of piled out in the streets together. I thought this was interesting. Big truck carrying a lot of bananas. And I guess these are brick masons or stone masons, and looks like they're working pretty hard at their jobs today. We were amazed if you can appreciate all the stuff that's being balanced on the back of this motorcycle. They use motorcycles for transportation a lot, and it was amazed how much stuff they would put on their motorcycles and just Tool down the road. We're leaving the town now, and we're getting into a little more countryside here. And you can see some of the people with their cattle just grazing on the side of the road. Here's a little bit of a more modern house, a little different from the bomas that you see, the little mud huts. And we were amazed at the women that could balance these baskets on their head. I'm sure you've all seen pictures of that. More of the typical bomas. And this was a cute little family that was standing under a tree selling some beautiful baskets and some gorgeous rugs. We wish we could have taken that kind of stuff home, but we were limited to about a 30-pound pack to keep for luggage in these bush planes that we took. Here in a smaller town, it's market day. And you can see people are selling all of their wares. There was even a cattle sale going on here. There's some of the pots that the ladies were selling. And interesting, you see this little fella here. I couldn't believe as hot as it was, these people wore caps in the summertime. I never really understood why. They had all that cloaks on and everything, but this little guy was just being wrapped up and carried in on his mama's back in that little shawl, but he seemed pretty comfortable. Along the way, you could see children tending to sheep, cattle, goats, and herding them. And that's how they fed them. They just herded them to different areas. And most of the times, they would put them inside their bomas or their villages at night that had thorny fences to protect their animals from predators. And also, usually the older men and boys would sleep out at night with their animals to protect them from the predators. But they were sure clean. This was a pretty common scene along the road, cattle just grazing and crossing the road. And somebody's carrying firewood to their house for dinner, I guess. These are some boys that decided they were going to take a break and play a game of soccer. Next, we convinced Deo to stop at a Maasai Village or Boma for a tour. You can see they're dressed in their very traditional outfits, even the children. They welcomed us with dance and a tour of their tiny homes and school. You can see how small the house is when we're standing next to it. Inside, you can see the tiny kitchen as well. With the three of us barely having enough room to sit in it. Here, the children are having a lesson with their teacher. Of course, souvenirs were plentiful at the Maasai Village for the right price. Trust me, the Maasai are very savvy business people. And I bought several of these souvenirs, and so I have proof of how savvy they really are. Our journey to the Nagorov crater led us up one side of the Rift Valley. I was amazed at the fertile ground and lush fields here. Again, you can see the house is getting a little more developed in some places. Okay, we are at the Nagorov crater, and Lamala camp is our next tinted camp that we'll be viewing. So this was the entrance into the park. The parks were not gated, well, they were gated along the road, but because we were tracing out the Serengeti migration, none of the animals were fenced in. We went from one park to another park, but all the parks were linked. So think of it as a greenway that encompasses the whole Serengeti migration, so these animals can move freely from one area to another at will. Once at the entrance to the Ngorongoro crater, we were accosted by baboons looking for a handout, or a little thievery, perhaps. This guy, he was bad. We got something though. After shaking that motley crew, our guide led us to an overlook of the crater, formed by a volcano that imploded a very long time ago. It was breathtaking. And even better was knowing that the next day we would be exploring that area. Acting as a centurion, just beyond the gate, was this beautiful male lion. He allowed us to pass, but his watchful eyes never turned away from us. And he literally was at the side of the road from me to probably that wall. You know, he was, or closer, he was just right there. So cool. A little scary, but very cool. The next morning, Dale packed our breakfast and our lunch. There was so much to see. Most days we would be gone from 6:30 in the morning until 5:30 at night. Once entering the floor of the crater, we were amazed at the diversity of animals living there. This is the equivalent of a Kate's Cove bear jam, with lions as the main attraction. Please note how large this male lion is when standing next to the safari jeep. Yeah. In the bush, you cannot realize how truly massive these creatures are. I didn't even realize it until I took this picture and saw it from my own eyes. He was huge. Most of the times we saw them like this, just laying down in the bush and, you know, the grass kind of covering the mud. Just like little kittens. Very cat-like behavior. Mama snuggling with her baby. Deo found a lovely pond at which to stop for lunch. Our neighbors were some shy hippos that would appear briefly out of the water to see if we were still there. Once done, much to our delight, was a mother and a baby grazing in full view just over the hill. On the road again, I was taken back by the massive size of these elephants when compared to the large safari jeep. The African elephant is the largest land mammal on the planet. Unfortunately, we were not able to identify all the birds we saw, like this guy. But close by was this very large hoary bustard. It is the largest flying bird in the world, averaging 40 pounds. The Thompson's gazelle's most distinguishing feature is the dark stripe that runs along its chest and abdomen. Both males and females of this species have antlers. The hartebeest, not nearly as attractive, but makes up for looks in speed. They are the fastest of all the antelopes. Yeah, he's pretty ugly. Okay, two tawny eagles take to the ground for a tasty morsel. And a variety of waterfowl beat the heat in a small pond. Here, the eland, largest of all the antelope, gracefully or peacefully grazing. The males and the females of this species are sporting impressive antlers. In a field of green pasture, Deo spotted something the size of my thumbnail. He quickly pointed out this was a black rhino. We were in disbelief until we looked through our binoculars and cameras with telephoto lenses to make out the massive and elusive beast. It was the only one we saw in the wild, a rare find indeed, thanks to our cunning guide. Back at camp, we are greeted by our Maasai warrior night guard. They walk the unfenced camp at night to keep unwanted animals away. Yeah, that was kind of concerning for me when I realized the camps weren't fenced, but they just have a guard, walk at night, and everything's fine. And every morning I would get up and I would ask our warrior, did we have any visitors at night? And he would go, yes. His English was not great, but what did we have? And he'd say, cave buffalo, or one I said, lion. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad he was out there taking care of us. But we did. We felt very safe in all of our tented camps, and they were all very, very nice. Okay. All right. Well, we got back in camp just in time to grab a quick shower, a warm shower, and all the camps had solar powered and Wi-Fi capability, so we could contact our family and friends during our trip. Our safari took us further north the next day to our third camp, Nadutu, in the southern Serengeti. Along the way, we spied donkeys taking a break from their labor. There's a few zebras over there with them. A mother and her son allowed us to take their pictures in exchange for some food. Most of the time, they did not want you taking their picture unless you were giving them money. So, but we understood it's a poor country and poor people, and so we were happy to oblige with some of our food. There are 7 species of giraffe in Africa. This is the Maasai giraffe. Each species has its own pattern of spots. He blends in rather well with this tree, don't you think? They rarely lay down because they cannot breathe if their head goes to the ground while doing so. Sunset in the southern Serengeti is so beautiful, seen here with a shallow lake in the foreground. The next morning, we ventured across a herd of wildebeest. It's calving season for them. Any of you cattle farmers have seen this plenty of times, but it was quite a thrill for my companions. They were just dropping babies everywhere. Of course, predators like this hyena, the vultures, and other birds of prey are watching as well. Here, a bald-headed marabou stork feeds with the vultures on leftovers. Now that's a pretty prey. Sorry, Darren. I'm ahead of myself. There's our yearbook story.
There he is.
I think it was interesting because this guy was kind of double jointed. The next picture you can see how he's sitting. It's like, really? That doesn't look very comfortable. But he seemed okay with it. Part of the circle of life is watching a kill and how it plays out with the predators and its prey. This cheetah had overcome an impala, but unfortunately, competition from a hyena, a pair of jackals, and a huge flock of vultures quickly drove her away. I timed it. The vultures consumed this carcass in 9 minutes. Yeah, and the hyena was left with skin and bones. You can see the hyena just dragging off part of what's left. But they were impressive vultures. They did their job well, let's put it that way. And the cheetah hunts alone, unlike a pride of lions. So cheetahs have to be very careful to not get injured. So that's why these other predators can easily scare them off of their prey. Onto a prettier sight, we found a flood of white storks inhabiting this shallow pool. A hooded vulture looked on as a hot air balloon sailed across the marsh. Unfortunately, noise from the balloon scared away a pride of lions with their cubs. Yeah, we were kind of disappointed, kind of bad at the balloon people. They did not like that noise when those balloons go whoosh, like that, you know, they're blowing up hot air. Anyway, the lions didn't like it. To quickly reverse our disappointment, Dale heard the call of this Vero Eagle Owl. Standing 2 feet in height as adults, these young ones are probably waiting on a meal. It was highly unusual to find them in broad daylight. I tell you, our guide was just awesome. He would hear talking about him over and over again, how he would see things and hear things. So, yeah, we were amazed at. The next picture tells the story of the Serengeti Migration. It started by the zebra. They are the smart ones and know the route. The wildebeest will follow, as do a few of the antelope. In the background is a flock of flamingo taking refuge in a shallow lake, while a dust storm brews on the far side. The central Serengeti is our next stop at Camp Moru. As we look back to our south, we can see the dry desert-like terrain we have come from. As we look north, a completely different terrain awaits us. The kopis, or rock outcroppings, like this one, were used as a model for the Lion King movie. A lioness and her cubs have claimed this kopie as their home. And they actually provide shelter and homes for other animals and reptiles, snakes and lizards and hyraxes and other things. But we could see the lions. They were the most impressive. Herds of zebra and impala graze as the pygmy falcon scours the landscape. Don't let his size fool you. He is a very ferocious hunter. What's going on here? Another lion jam with a pride of 10 to 15 lions in tall grass stalking a herd of Cape buffalo. The blue crane and the white egret, along with the black-headed heron and the Egyptian goose, all seemed very unconcerned with the big beast and what was going on, because they were right in that marsh with it. A rare find was this elusive leopard resting in a tree. We took time to sit and relax with her from a safe distance while we ate our lunch. Afterwards, it was time to leave Tanzania. Our guide took time to stop at a small museum along the way. We found this little fellow here. Believe it or not, it is a distant relative to the elephant. He's called a hyrax. Our last camp awaits us. We have taken several puddle jumpers. So we're fixing to go to Camp Inandura in the Maasai Mara. So we have taken some puddle jumpers to cross from Tanzania into Kenya and onto the Maasai Mara. As traditional in all the camps, we were greeted with song, dance, and some wet, warm washcloths to wipe away some of the day's travel dust. The Maasai people are so beautiful and colorful. And unlike other camps, this one had women on their staff as well, a relatively new occurrence in the camps. Aren't they beautiful? Our camp was directly above the Vero River, where the famous wildebeest and zebra crossings occur during the wet season. Now, the only thing inhabiting our part of the river is a small crocodile, and a turtle, with some baboons on the other side. The next morning, we found this pride of lions, which had serenaded us the night before. They were wandering close to camp and hunting a cunning warthog. I thought this was like Mickey Mouse ears. I just couldn't miss that picture. The warthog hid in a hole just big enough for himself. So you can see this is his nose and these are the tusks of the warthog. So he had an escape route planned out already. The auger buzzard had a ringside seat for the whole show. The animals were less plentiful here right now, but this gave us an excellent opportunity to observe a cheetah for 4 hours. We kept our distance and watched nature unfold as she hunted. The Thompson gazelles, the zebras, and the ostriches were all keeping an eye on her as well. The next shot is perhaps the best one I took because I was lucky enough to catch the action shot of her chasing the gazelle. Yeah, I don't know how I got there. Dumb luck. Unfortunately, she did not succeed. The gazelle took off into some rocks and brush, and she kind of lost her speed. A warthog and her baby became the next target. However, Mom was too fierce to let the cheetah get her baby. So the cheetah actually kind of grabbed the baby. Mom came back around at the cheetah. Remember what I said, cheetahs have to be very careful not to get injured, because if they're injured, they can't hunt. and they'll die, possibly from infection. So they're kind of having a standoff right here. It was a tough day for the cheetah. But life in Africa is tough for animals and for people. The next morning, Ping, our Kenya guide, arranged breakfast on the river with the hippos. This brings a whole new meaning to the pool party as they fight for space in the shrinking waters. Their very large mouth and very long teeth made me realize how ferocious they can be. Now, Darren and I looked this up. Their mouths can be 2 feet wide, and they can open their mouths 150 degrees. So that's almost like that. So you can see how wide this guy's got his mouth open. That's not even as far as it would go, I don't think. Right here, they're just posturing, saying, this is my territory, go somewhere else. One of the saddest stories that we found were of the famous four Musketeers, as they have been named. These 4 male lions that are well past their prime hunt and live together to survive after being removed from their pride by younger male lions. They were thin and scarred. But the park rangers helped Mother Nature out by providing them with a feast from a lame Cape buffalo. This came after a phone call from our awesome and very concerned guide, Ping. There's a big scar. You can see probably from some animal attack that he suffered. Lunch was brought to us as we journeyed through the Mara. As you can see, food and drink were plentiful and exquisitely prepared. Our Jeep was more open here in Kenya, and we really felt up close and personal with the animals. In the other Jeep, we had windows that were enclosed and kind of rolled up. But here, nope, just some canvas. Along the way, many other birds were spotted. Seen here, the Haydida abyss, the griffon vulture with its very large nest, and the yellow-billed kite. Hard to miss was this foul creature, the giant Nile crocodile. Yeah. As we made it back to camp, another rare sighting. It's a leopard hiding in the bush with her fresh kill. Each camp had its own charm, and the staff were special people. They treated us like friends and fed us like kings and queens. That night, my roommate and I got to sleep in separate tents because they weren't that busy. So we had a porch in the middle and our own bedroom on either side. It was really nice. And they just did everything up so beautifully. We were very spoiled, even though we were in tents. It was time to say goodbye to the Serengeti. A group of topee antelope showed up to see us off. At the small airport in the Maasai Mara, the southern round hornbill birds gathered their breakfast. Yeah. These are just the oddest looking birds in the world. They're very cool. Nairobi was our final destination. In some ways, it seemed like we saved the best for last. We dined at a beautiful lunch spot. Then it was off to see two gyms sitting in the middle of the city. One was the Rothschild Giraffe Preserve. The other, the David Shelbridge Elephant Orphanage. So here, I just wanted to show you some scenes of Nairobi as we traveled around the city. Lots of gates to probably keep unwanted things, people and animals, off the properties. At the elephant orphanage, you can see baby elephants being cared for by their loving human companions. It was very moving. These guys stay with their elephants 24/7. They herd them out into the bush during the day, and they herd them in at night. And they sleep in the stalls with each one of the little elephants. So they're basically surrogate parents. And over time, as the elephants grew, they would be moved to different camps where they would be gradually transitioned back into the wild. And there was a black rhino there, Maxwell. He had been blind since birth, so he had a forever home at the elephant orphanage. We reluctantly left these adorable creatures to visit the Rothschild Giraffe Preserve. Here again, you can see just parts of the city, a little bit of foliage, and I was just amazed at these two. And there was even a safari park in Nairobi, which we've been on safari, so we didn't bother going, but into that. But to see the elephant orphanage and the giraffe preserve right there in the middle of the city, it was just amazing how they did that. Obviously, they were fenced. The Rothschild Giraffe Preserve was very informative. But for me, the highlight was my goodbye kisses from Betty and Ed. Yeah, isn't that sweet? I was the only one that wanted to have a kiss. Can you believe that? My other companions did not. It's like, I came to Africa to experience everything, and this was part of it, guys. You haven't lived until one of those scratchy trunks grabs a treat from your lips. So we just had a little treat right here, and they would just very gently take it from our mouth. It wasn't gross at all. We spent almost 2 weeks in a land so foreign to us, yet for me, it felt like home, like I belonged there. I'm not sure I'll ever get the chance to go again, but it has forever changed and enriched my life. I hope that someday, if it is your dream as well, you too can make this incredible journey. And I hope that these pictures and stories enlighten you and encourage you. Asante, thank you. And I would also like to thank Darren Kellogg, my assistant, that without her and all her awesome computer skills, none of this would have happened, because she helped me catalog and compile it from 3,000 pictures down to about 800 pictures, down to about 300 pictures for this presentation, and helped me do the PowerPoint. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I also want to thank friends at the Seymour Library because without them, I would not have been able to do this presentation and share with all of you what I experienced in a very short period of time. Obviously, after 3 years, I still cherish the memories and hope to go back one day. I want to thank the library staff, this beautiful facility that they've provided us now to be in, to come together to have such special meetings. And I really want to thank the people at the Wild Source Travel Agency. They're out of Golden, Colorado, for putting together this amazing trip. This agency has a very, very deep roots in Africa, and the founder of this organization is a wildlife biologist, and they put a lot of money from the proceeds and the profits that they made back into wildlife conservation in Africa. They even have a camp there with a wildlife biologist on staff there. So very, very awesome people. So this is the poem that kind of moved me. I read it before I went to Africa, and then when I came back from Africa, I read it again, and I said, this just kind of sums it up. So for me, this was Africa. And so I hope you'll understand the poem a little bit better now that you've seen my pictures and heard my stories. And I'm happy to entertain any questions. If there's anything you want to look at on the display table, or if you want to just hang out and talk afterwards, I'm happy to be here. There are bathrooms. If anyone needs a restroom, they're just inside that doorway down the hall. So thank you for being here. Yes.
What y'all have to eat? I'm sure you guys are eating. I just wonder what y'all eat.
We ate, our guides, our staff would come out at night and they would say, tonight we have a special treat for you. We're going to have wildebeest. And we'd all go,
Oh, yeah.
oh, okay. They were kidding. Normally we would have chicken or fish or beef. So, you know, and lots of salads, fruits, vegetables, you know. There was even, I don't know if you can tell, one of the tray, little plates had like a pizza on it. And then in the bush for breakfast, they had these big trunks, basically packed with silverware and food. And Dale would have coffee and juice and rolls and milk, cereal. I mean, it was just incredible. He'd just lay out a picnic table and there he'd bring our breakfast. We'd have it, out there somewhere under a tree or maybe out in the middle of nowhere. And the same thing, for lunch. They would pack little lunches for us, and the food, there was so much food we couldn't eat it all. That's why we were sharing with some of the people as we traveled, because, they would pack sandwiches, almost like wraps, and apples, and, other kinds of drinks for us. So it was just, the food wasn't weird at all, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But they would tease us and, tell us we were going to eat all this strange stuff, but we really didn't. So, yeah.
No, I just want to say thanks, Dr. Bentley, thank you, Karen. Very interesting. I did want to ask, did you at any time feel afraid, like, oh, something could, I couldn't imagine being near all that wildlife, and there were a couple of the photos I was thinking, oh wow, I don't know how I would have responded to that.
Right.
Did you at any time feel like that?
Well, I'll tell you, that lion, the centurion that I talked about, when Deo saw him up ahead on the road, laying in the road. He got up and moved, and we thought, well, he's gone, you know. And then as we approached that spot, he was laying right there on the side of the road in the bush. And Deo stopped. He just stopped the Jeep. And I was sitting on the side of the lane. And I've got my cell phone and my camera, and I'm going click, click, you know, and I literally, for a moment, it was so gorgeous and so engaging that I just literally locked eyes with him. And then I thought, this is a predator. You don't really want to lock eyes with a predator. So I kind of, I had to do one of these numbers here, you know, but he never, he could have stood up and took one leap and been in our Jeep. And really that was probably the scariest thing that I personally sort of experienced. Otherwise, you would think that these wild animals could just, you know, but I think probably, to be honest with you, inside that safari Jeep, they are so conditioned to seeing those Jeeps that they look at them just like another animal wandering around. Now, you had to be very quiet and you couldn't move around a lot, you know, and I got pretty excited one time when the guy had to calm me down. Because I was jumping around and trying to get from one side of the Jeep to the other and taking pictures, and it was like, but anyway, but you didn't get out of that Jeep if there were any wildlife around, for sure. And Deo or Ping, our guides, would get out of the Jeep first, and they would look all around, you know. And most times, if you needed a bathroom break, you were out in the middle of nowhere, so the ladies went behind the Jeep, and the men went in front of the Jeep. And that was the only cover you had, you know. So if you're not used to going in the bush, well, you had a long way. So,
Were there any snakes?
you know, supposedly there are, but we never saw any. We saw one little lizard, and he was beautiful. I didn't put him in the presentation. I just didn't show everything. But he was right on that, where we saw the copies. There was one beautiful sort of a red and blue lizard. But supposedly there are snakes, but a lot of times they come out at night. So we just didn't see any.
Mike, can you just tell the story of this elephant?
Oh, okay.
All right. Real.
This is a little story of kind of a, like, on telling on myself. In Arusha, the first park we visited, we were so excited to be there. We hadn't seen any elephants yet. So we drive up to Arusha Park, and the guide goes in to pay our fees, and we all looked up, and we went, oh, there's an elephant. You know, there's an elephant already. And so we're all like, and our guide looked at us and he said, it's not real. It looked so real that it was just like, it's like, well, we have to have a picture made with it. So obviously he's not real, and that's the only reason I got that close to an African elephant. Yeah. But we were pretty excited. We were really excited. Yeah. Yes.
Have you been able to give this presentation to any children or schools?
I haven't. Not that I would be opposed to that, but yeah, I love obviously talking about it, showing pictures, and so yeah, I had hoped maybe this would springboard a few other, you know, talks or presentations, because a lot of work went into this to get it ready, and so, but no, I haven't had the opportunity yet, but I'm not opposed to it. Any other questions? Or, yeah.
So how many were in the group?
Just the four of us. Yes. Yeah.
And you were not acquainted before?
Well, Don and Jeannie Collier were my companions, and they live here in the Seymour area. Some of you may know them. And my roommate was actually Jeannie's friend Pat, who was from Canada. And she had met years ago when Pat came down here as a exchange teacher, did a teacher exchange thing. And so Pat was a teacher in Canada, now retired. But Pat had been to Africa before. So she's the one that knew our guides Ping and Deo and was familiar with the Wild Source, our travel agency. So she's the one that kind of guided us along the way and kind of helped us navigate getting there.
Well, perhaps you could spend that, and you could take on that role with another group, right? You're probably ready.
Probably, yeah.
Especially if they pay for it for you, right?
Yeah, especially if they pay for it. I'd go again in a heartbeat. It was an expensive trip, I won't lie to you. And there were a lot of shots you had to take. We had to get visas, I didn't have a passport. There were a lot of hoops to jump through. And literally, we started planning this trip about a year before we actually went. And actually, I was making monthly down payments to pay for it. But it was expensive, but worth every penny, to do it. So, yeah.
What was the temperature?
80s and 90s most of the time. Now, at the Nagorov crater, we were up high. So at that tented camp, it was kind of chilly. In fact, at night, I'm not kidding you guys, they had these bed warmers inside our beds. So after dinner, when we went back to camp, there were these bed warmers inside our beds to warm our beds up for us.
What time of year did you go?
February, which is the dry season and basically the warmer season there, because they're south of the equator. Not too far south, but a little bit south of the equator.
The Serengeti wasn't totally dried up yet, though, even though that was the dry season.
It was the dry season, right? So, so where we saw the big crocodile, that's where the famous, like that area is where in the wet season, where a lot of the animals have migrated to, and they end up crossing that river,
Yeah.
you know.
And the gators,
And the gators get a few of them, yeah. Yeah, our guy was so funny, he said, the zebras know the route, so they start the migration. They get everybody going, and it's time to move. But when they get to the river, they stop, and they let the wildebeest cross through.
guinea pigs.
Like,
Well,
well,
it has to be a management.
yeah.
Do you know why they do that migration?
Well, yes, it is because in certain seasons, like where the calving season was, our guide told us that a lot of times there are minerals in the ground, and they eat and lick the minerals to help them with their babies and the nursing and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot more shelter there and protection in that particular part. So they go there for a lot of their calving and that kind of thing. And then, probably as that area gets depleted of resources and the rains come and some of the drier areas get more green, then they'll migrate to those areas.
You had 10 days, is that what you had?
Yes, we left Knoxville at about 4 or 5 o'clock. We were at the airport by about 5 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, and it literally was a 24-hour journey. But the Wild Source told us, when you get on that long plane trip, we flew from Knoxville to Washington, D.C. From Washington, D.C., we flew to another city in Africa. I'm sorry, I can't remember right now. But between Washington and Africa, that plane trip, I think, was about 12 hours or so. And so they said, get your doctor to prescribe some sleeping medicine for you, because you're going to want to sleep. so that you're not totally exhausted when you get there, which was good advice. So I did. I ate my dinner that they provided us on the plane. I took my little sleeping medicine and just passed out because I don't want to try to sleep in anywhere. But Jeannie and Don said the waitress or the stewardess kept coming by going, "Is she okay? Is she okay?" I just passed out. And the poor guy, I was on the aisle seat, and the poor guy that was next to me, I think he really had to go to the bathroom. But he didn't look disturbed, and so he waited until I woke up to go to the bathroom. Felt really bad about that. But, you know, that did help a lot, because after we got there, you're kind of on adrenaline when you get there, because, you know, so, because you're just so excited to be there. But, yeah. So after we landed in Africa at the major airport, then we took a smaller plane to Arusha. So that was kind of how the journey played out. And then going back, we actually traveled into Germany and then back to back to Chicago and then back home. So we took a little different route going back than we did coming home. But Pat, who's much more world traveled than I am, you know, helped us navigate all that. And she actually found that little cute little garden house, that Airbnb that we stayed in the first night. Because really, we weren't supposed to be there until the day after we got there. But the plane, the people at the airport had kind of messed up our travel arrangements. And so to take the flight we wanted, we had to leave a day early. So we're like, oh, we have to get there a day early. Oh, darn. You know, so Pat found us that little Airbnb to stay in the first night. So that whole trip into Arusha Park and Airbnb, that was kind of like a little side trip. The Coffee House Lodge is really where our trip should have started from. And I was telling some of the folks here, when we went to Arusha Park, when we were leaving the park, now remember this is our first day there, but we had a lot of questions for Dale, and he was so kind and informative. But as we were sitting at the park entrance after we'd been inside the park, having some refreshments, a TV crew from Arusha came over and spoke to our guide and wanted to interview us. So we actually got to talk to the people of Arusha about the questions that they had for us. Like, well, Jeannie didn't want to talk, but Don, who's a businessman, Don Collier, and Pat, who's a school teacher, and then me being a veterinarian, my focus was the animals. But each one of us had sort of a different take on Africa and what we had experienced so far, you know, from a slightly different perspective. But one of the questions was, do you feel safe? You know, and we did. So far, we had not seen any problems or had any trouble. And so we all said, yes, we felt very safe here. I do remember vividly, they wanted to know, what do you want the people of Africa to know? And Deo had told us about the president, I guess, of Tanzania, had this cockeyed idea about allowing the people to hunt the wildebeest. So evidently they're not allowed to hunt the wildebeest. He said, how long do you think it would take to deplete the wildebeest population, which is a source of food for all the other predators, you know, if that happens? So anyway, so, you know, he gave us a little perspective. So when it was my turn to talk, when I just looked right into the camera and I said, the reason I'm here is for these animals. And this is your main industry. Tourism is your industry in Africa. And I said, if you want to continue to have tourism as a valuable part of your, you know, culture in your industry, you need to protect these animals. You know, I just really hit that idea home, you know, because that was very disturbing to me, you know, what Dale was telling us. And then there are poachers, and, you know, you hear about the other things, which they definitely downplay there. But we did hear some stories about some poaching and things like that that went on. But for me, it was a real honor to be asked to do that. We never got to see the TV show, so we don't know how it came across or how much of it they even showed. But anyway, we hope it made an impact, but that was kind of cool.
What is the approximate cost of a trip like that?
Okay, I didn't really look up the figures, but in my head, I believe that the actual safari, what we were charged was, I think around $9,000. Maybe $9,000 to $10,000. That included, once we got there, once our feet were on the ground in Africa, all transportation, food, lodging, everything was included, okay? They did give us recommendations on how much money to take to tip our staff at the camps and our guide. So I literally took $1,000 with me to buy souvenirs with and tip the staff. I made it back to the airport in Nairobi with $1. I literally had $1 in my name, but fortunately I had some credit cards, so by the time we got to the airport in Nairobi, I could use a credit card. But anyway, I would say, like, a lot of the clothing, I had to buy some new clothing because they said you can't wear camo, you don't want to wear bright colors, you want to blend in with the environment. So, and, so I went out and bought, a couple of outfits and, that kind of thing. And then all the shots and stuff. Now that gets pretty expensive. I think the Wild Source told us to go to a trip clinic, and there is one out in West Knoxville, but really I think you get just as good service if you go to the health department, because actually I had to go to the health department for one of my vaccines that the trip clinic didn't have. And I think they're probably a little more reasonable at the health departments than they are at the trip clinic, but anyway. So I would say I spent maybe $500 or $600 getting vaccines and different things like that. Maybe $300 to $500 on clothes. I don't remember there, and then we go shopping one day. And then of course there was the visas and the passports. The airfare, I do remember over there and back round trip, I think with trip insurance, and you don't want to take a trip like this without having trip insurance, was probably around just under $2,000. So I figure all told, I spent at least $15,000, either on the trip, getting ready for the trip, or something like that. Could have been more, but yeah. But it was kind of, like I said, we had a year to kind of spread everything out and do it in stages. So it was, like I said, it was well worth it, and I'd do it again. If I had the money to do it, I probably wouldn't spend that much money again. If I go again, I hope to do, I got the clothes, and I got the passport, and the nurse at the trip clinic said, you can go anywhere in the world now for the next 5 years except Indonesia. I don't know what else you gotta go to get to Indonesia, but I can go anywhere else in the world and I'm good for 5 years with all the vaccines I took. I never had any problems or reactions. They told us to be careful about the food we ate. They said if you can't peel it, don't eat it. So we were a little afraid, like the fresh vegetables that they would serve us or salads. And we felt bad because we were afraid to eat it. And it was just beautifully prepared and everything. Finally said, we don't care. They gave us medicine. They recommended that you take some medicine for diarrhea in case you get a little trip sick, from something you ate. So we all had our medicine, and I think Don had to take a little medicine while he was there. But we finally broke down and we just ate everything they prepared for us. And I thought, this is ridiculous. So, and it was fine. We were fine, But, they did caution us, but it was good. It was all good.
Did the locals eat about like we do, or was it prepared different?
I assume that Well, I do know that the Maasai people still eat, well, drink a lot of animal blood. That's part of their culture, if you do a little research. And they do eat meat. So their main diet is meat and blood. So we were told. Now, and they don't understand how the Maasai people are so healthy with that kind of a diet, but they are. They're extremely healthy people. But I think in the cities, I mean, when we were in Nairobi, we went another place too for dinner before we got on the airport. It was just like being in Knoxville in a restaurant, you know. There's a cool app you can download on your phone called WhatsApp. And if you do any traveling, it's very cool because then you can link all of your buddies, whoever has that app on their phone. All you gotta do is take pictures and go to that app and you can send pictures or videos or whatever. So that was a very cool thing that I found out right before I left and enabled us to kind of stay in touch with everybody. Hey, yes.
And you say you adopted an elephant as part of this trip?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. To actually be allowed into the elephant orphanage, we had to adopt an elephant. Now, it wasn't that expensive. It was $50 for the year, but we had to, the David Shelbridge Elephant Orphanage was, you could go to their website and go through all the stories of all the little different elephants that were orphaned there and just read about them. And then you would pick one and basically just say, I want to adopt this elephant for a year, and they'd send you a certificate. And basically to be allowed into that orphanage, you had to be a donor. It was $50. I mean, you know, but it was, you know, well worth it. And I've actually tried to support them since then, and since coming home with, you know, sending money and adopting an elephant, you know, to just support their endeavors. But yeah, now the giraffe preserve, we just paid a fee and went in like any other little. And the Rothschild giraffe is another species of giraffe, and his spots were a little bit different from the Maasai giraffe. But the Maasai giraffe is what we saw mostly. The Rothschild giraffe is a very weak, it's a weaker species, and so they're trying to protect them, and that's why that preserve was set up.
This may be a good place for us intermission, stretch our legs.
Oh, yeah.
Restroom. I want to say goodbye to people on the live stream that have joined us. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you can come to another one of our events soon. You do not have to leave. Perhaps you would like Dr. Bentley to explain some of the artifacts.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, the lion picture is a picture that I bought in Africa, in Nairobi, at an art show.